Here we go on a special 9 o'clock start time because, boy, we've been wanting to see these live results on Thursday night come in. Welcome, everybody, to the Gym City Sports Podcast. As always, brought to you by our friends at Rebich Investments, keeping financial guidance simple. If you want more info on Rebich Investments, it's really easy to know how. Just go to their website, www.rebichinvestments.com, or you can simply go ahead and click on the website link in their phone number. You can dial at 814-734-3433. Again, 814-734-3433 is the number to dial. Busy show tonight. A lot of high school basketball talk, as we've been talking about the last few weeks. High school playoffs are in full swing. And oh my goodness, have there been some crazy upsets? Have there been some crazy good games? And what we're going to start talking about tonight are the 6A championships. Erie, the winner in the girls, and my goodness, McDowell with a crazy win in the boys. We're going to update you on that in just a second. Going to bring in Tom Koval in a couple of minutes, but we start by bringing back in Nick Artman, who's, I think, like everybody else on this planet, is dealing with a bit of an illness here, but he's motoring on through it for us, my friend. Hope you're feeling a little bit better tonight.
My gosh, the plague that is going around is just awful. And I've probably said it before, too, but it's always the worst when you have kids because, so we have 3 kids, and one goes to school. Somebody comes home with, a runny nose. It's a ticking time bomb, brother, until somebody else gets it. So, unfortunately, it made its way to me at the end of last week, and I still can't seem to kick it. So, we're here. I'm having fun. We might pull some tissues out mid-show. It's going to be a fun one.
Hey, well, you know what? The nice thing is we're home. We don't have to worry about being next to each other because I know in the same way with 2 kids, man, and if you have any kids, you send them out somewhere, they come back, and they're like a magnet. They're just attached to whatever plague or something is out there. So totally understand on that front.
Yeah. Social distancing aplenty here tonight.
I don't even know if social distancing is going to help when you have kids. It doesn't really seem to make a difference either. So we're excited to be with you, though. Thanks again for being a part of our show. Make sure to subscribe, however you may be watching, wherever you may be watching us from. We're live tonight on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, on Twitch, and wherever you get your podcast. And we got a lot to talk about tonight, starting with this. In case you missed it, and this game just went final a couple of minutes ago, McDowell Athletics Twitter putting it out so we can finally announce it. Final score tonight in 6A boys, McDowell 57, Erie 55. What a freaking game this was. If you are just coming from it or you're just tuning into our podcast and getting some live reaction, we'll go ahead and let us know in the comments how it played out live in person for you. We're sad that we couldn't be there. But looking at the quick box score, just from what we saw, Stephon Porter in double figures. Looks like Blaze Myers put up a decent game. Camden Kramer held to just 7 points. There were a couple of players in that game who were able to put up double figures based on the box score that McDowell has posted. But, oh my goodness, Nick, what a game this was and what a down-to-the-wire finish. And for McDowell, it's so funny. We talk about in sports, it's so hard to beat a team 3 times, and McDowell almost fell victim of that tonight, but they get it done to move into the sub-regional.
Yeah, and this was a game that, and I feel like this is, you could say this, insert every time McDowell and Erie play, but it's a game that could have went either way. Now, McDowell seemed to really have Erie's number early on this year. They weren't very close games, I guess, if you're looking at the box score. But looking at tonight's game, end of the first, it's 18-11. And then you come to the end of the second, McDowell and Erie trade, they go back and forth. This is, like you were talking about pulling off the box score and post it. You can follow along on McDowell Athletics Twitter page, X page, whatever you call it anymore. They're only leading 29-24 at the half, so Erie starts to close in. You get into the third, it's a 3-point game, 40-7, and then it's just back and forth in that fourth quarter, and it's just McDowell outlasts Erie in this one, and it's just another classic down at the Hag.
And it's been so interesting because really since COVID, all of these championship games between McDowell and Erie have been incredibly close. I mean, regular season be damned, these two teams always play each other close in the championship game. And the one thing we saw, and we're going to bring in Tom Koval in a minute, and he can attest to this, the one thing we saw from Coach Pulliam and the Erie Royals is that as the season wore on, they got much better. They got more aggressive with their defensive tendencies. They forced the press a lot. They made it really difficult on teams to score the basketball. Holding McDowell to 57 points is in and of itself a really big accomplishment for an Erie team that had faced McDowell twice before. And to your point, Nick, they really couldn't stop the Trojan offense because McDowell is such a great offensive team that was so good this year in being able to score the basketball. And so I think when you look at this game two different ways, one, you got to give credit to Erie because of the way that they were able to flourish at the end of the year. And I think you can make the argument if the season was 2 or 3 weeks longer, Erie might have won this game. I think they were on that trajectory that they were playing their best basketball at the end of the season. Again, Coach Pulliam, kudos to him for doing such a great job. But I think for McDowell and what we've seen with Coach O'Connor is just his ability now to win games that are tight down the stretch. And he struggled to do that in a few years back, right after COVID. And now he's got it in the second straight District 10 championship. And what a game this was. I want to bring in Coach Tom Koval, who is literally coming back from a game of his own. So hopefully we're not forcing him straight into the equation here, TK. But I'm sure you've been following this game. You obviously know these two teams very well, having coached one and coached against the other. Another classic down to the wire. But we were saying before you came on, man, if this season was 1 or 2 weeks longer, maybe Erie wins this game, but McDowell pulls it out down the stretch. Your thoughts?
Well, I heard you say that, Coach O'Connor was struggling a little bit after COVID to close games out. I really think I had a lot to do with that. So let's give the kudos over.
Credit where credit's due to TJ.
But yeah, we've really made it a rivalry for that District 10 game, and I don't want to say that the regular season games don't matter much, but they don't, right? It's that last game of the season that really matters, and the Erie boys were up for it. It looked like they defended well. I know they shot better than I've seen them shoot, especially from the perimeter, watching some clips of the game. So, those are battles with some teenage boys. And when you're playing really hard, you never know which way it's going to go based on what the regular season was.
We were talking, too, just a couple of minutes ago, Tom, about the scoreline and the fact that McDowell's offense all season long had been incredibly proficient. We had seen them put up 70, 80 points against the Girards of the world. Of course, the crazy triple overtime win against Cathedral Prep the first time out. They had really dominated Erie in both the games in the season series in the regular season. But you look at the scoreline, and you have to give credit to the Royals defense and how they were able to play. And I think you and I have talked about Coach Pulliam and his defense throughout the show and about how that is so difficult for teams to be able to score. I think this is really indicative of, I think you got to give credit to McDowell for pulling it out, but for the Erie Royal squad, who at the beginning of the season went through some bumps and bruises, and again, you coached a few of the players on this team, I would make the argument that if the season was 1 or 2 weeks longer, we might be in a little bit of a different situation because clearly this team in Erie was playing their best basketball down the stretch.
Yeah, playoff basketball is so much different than regular season. It really is a battle on the defensive end. You've got to really work for every bucket, which is probably no different than any other level of basketball. It looked like Coach Shannon really had them, grinding on defense and making it really difficult for McDowell. So, again, I guess kudos to them, but the bottom line was McDowell got the job done and got the victory, and they're moving on. It survived in advance at this time of the year. So you never know which way it's going to go as probably this episode goes into 4A and talk about some of those games. That's for sure.
Yeah, we're going to get into that in a couple of minutes. And if you missed last week's episode with TK and I, the D10 gods listened to us. We're going to get into that in a second, but thank you because we love the chaos. But McDowell beats Erie 57-55. And now, Nick, when you look at this Trojan team, they're going to get Alderdice on Tuesday coming up in the sub-regional. This is a squad with Coach O'Connor that we have seen all season long be consistent. I think it's key that they win a defensive battle game. I really think that they are in a good position to hope to potentially make a run. We'd love to see them make a run in 6A, and we'll see how that happens. But again, I think this Trojan team is positioned pretty well now.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, right? And I feel like you see this everywhere. And Tom, you've seen this, coming from the coaching side. I've seen it coming at the Whitfield side. I just think it's a different level of playing field when you're coming from District 10 and heading down to the Whitfields. Alderdice is no joke. They're good year in, year out. They had another great year this year. So I think, yes, McDowell is on a heater right now, and that team is looking great. And, maybe they figured it out. They kind of, like you said earlier, they kind of shut down Camden Craner. So maybe Alderdice can lean into that a little bit, but I don't know, man. I think they're a great squad, but it's going to be, 1A, 1B when they get into that tournament. It might not be as easy as people may think to get down in there and match up against Alderdice.
Yeah, Alderdice, last year, their JV team was tremendous. I don't know that they lost the game, or they may have lost. Devin Crummy, the coach there, is an exceptional coach and an exceptional person. I mean, what a great guy. His dad coached for years at Pittsburgh Central Catholic, and he's running a great program down there. That is going to be a battle. I don't recall if it's up here or down there this year.
I think it's at McDowell. I'm pretty sure it's up in Erie, based on the brackets.
That certainly makes a difference, but an athletic team, they can score the ball. They do a lot of pressure, a lot of running and trapping. So we could see a very good game, especially if McDowell doesn't shoot it well.
Yeah, that game will be at McDowell. Trojans are on top of the bracket in District 10, where that sub-regional is concerned. So we have the Trojans and the Dragons on Tuesday at Paul Gold Gymnasium. That'll be a fun one, but what a D10 championship game tonight. Tom, you know this well. McDowell Erie doesn't disappoint, especially in postseason. That game has been the preeminent game in District 10 for the last few years, and it's going to continue to be that way as long as these two teams are really, really on top of things. All right, let's flip the script here, and I want to talk a bit before we go into 4A boys about the girls' side. In the game that took place last night, Erie taking down Warren in the 6A girls' championship 43-26. This Erie team struggled at the beginning offensively in the first quarter and then outscored Warren by 10 in the second quarter. Go Erie's box score has the Nevins girls both with 12 points each. Deasia Williams added double figures as well. And now this Erie team, TK, as we've talked about all year, they've got the recipe, it seems, to play that defensive style of game that will make it difficult for any team to beat them. Just your thoughts on the game last night and how far you think this Erie team can go based on what they've done this season, because it's been an impressive year for the Royals.
Well, I'll say first off, I wasn't surprised at the outcome. Paper, they're definitely a much stronger team than
right.
Just with the athleticism on defense. Even when Erie's not scoring, their athleticism on defense is just a little overwhelming for the Warren team this year. We'll see. Alderdice historically is not very strong on the girls' side. I saw them play up at Prep, I believe it was last year, and they had one or two girls that were okay, but from a team-wise, Erie was a lot better than them. Their real calling is going to come when they match up with that state college team. Probably, they're a very good team all the way around last year, and I think they showed it when they I think they blew out Erie last year when they went head to head.
What do you think, TK, this Erie team is going to have to do when let's assume they're able to get through Alderdice so they get to that state college phase when you get to the state tournament? What about this team would give you belief that they can get through a round like that? Because I think that's been the hurdle, right, for the Royals or even McDowell girls basketball when they've controlled 6A. It's once you get to that first round past the sub-regional, then it becomes difficult. Is there a avenue that they can take to be able to get past that hump based on what you know about this team and what we've seen all year?
Well, they just have to play their ball. I mean, for sure, the most important thing at the high school level is having good guards. And the Erie girls, they have two really good guards with the Nevins twins. They can score. Drea, she just works her tail off on the defense as well. I mean, she works so hard. So if those two, have it going on the offensive end, they're going to be real trouble to stop because they're going to keep teams down with their defense. As long I've always said that my whole life, right? If you can stop a team from scoring, you're going to be in the game. So if they stick with their defense going into there, they strong guards that can score the ball, and they just got to follow them.
And I think Nick too. We look around District 10, and Tom and I had this conversation last week, but I think it's worth bringing up again. Is that you get into the Whippy and State College is not part of that, but again, you get outside of Erie County, even more so heading to the middle of Pennsylvania and then to the Philadelphia area, and you see more offense, right? And I think what we're really looking for, at least from my perspective, is can we get a District 10 team that can go toe-to-toe with a really good offense that is a fundamentally sound defensive team and win that game? I think last year, maybe you could make the argument there were a couple of teams who had that, whether you want to say Girard was more of a defensive team, although I think their offense was probably better than their defense was last season. But it's going to be fascinating to see the first team that really is defensively minded, as Erie High is. Not that the Nevins kids can't score, because they can, but can you get by as a D10 team a squad that can score the basketball well? And we'll see if Erie's that first team on the girls' side that's able to do that. Yeah,
we talked a lot about the twins there, and Andrea and Aubrey are both very good, but their third, Deja Williams, who's averaging probably just a little under 10.
Yeah.
Third scorer, so she can have some big games in the playoffs, that third person, because we're going to get a lot of attention. Andrea handling the ball, and we know that Aubrey can shoot from three as well. So that third person, if we can see a good game out of that, or even the little guard Gigi that comes off the bench, right, that'll be real important to see if we can get some buckets out of those girls to really help them offensively.
And with Erie, it's exciting, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think with Erie, it's the team chemistry that's fun watching them this year, following along. And it's fun to, to tell the story, the twins, it's a twin thing. You've read that a few times and hearing it from different people around the city who've been reporting. And maybe that's it. Yes, they can play the defense, but I agree with Coach here. They can put up points as well. Looking at going to face Alderdice was on a tear again here at the end of the year. It looks like it's kind of hard to read off the Tribs High School Sports Network website, but they won at least their last 10 games, so they're going to be coming in hot. So you have to slow that team down. And I think different than maybe you've seen Erie in past years, they're able to kind of play that both sides of the ball. So can they make a run by just playing defense? Yeah, absolutely. But like TK said, they can score too, and that's going to help them out moving into, here into March.
They're going to get Alderdice, and Lance Brown will have his team ready to go, no question. It's going to be an exciting atmosphere, and I think Erie also gets to host that game as well. So we'll see if the Royals can get past that sub-regional, and then, as Tom was talking about, potentially get in to the state college round of the postseason, which will be, not that it's a guaranteed official game yet, but if that is the case, can they get over that hump and get through the first round of states past the sub-regional? All right, we're going to get to 4A in a second. Got a lot to talk about in that. Before we talk about that, though, we got to talk about our great sponsor, Ravitch Investments, and they do a great thing of keeping financial guidance simple. Folks, it's tax season. You've got a lot of things going on. You're trying to write up things that, 1099s, W-2s that you're trying to deal with. Maybe your financial situation is in a bit of a flux. Why not go to the people who are pros at guiding you through the difficult times? Ravitch Investments does a great job of keeping financial guidance simple. And all you have to do if you want more information is just head to the website, www.ravitchinvestments.com, or you can simply call their phone number at 814-734-3433. Again, 814-734-3433 is the number to dial. All right, Nick Artman, because you haven't been on this Thursday episode in at least a little bit, you're a fan of March Madness, right? You got to unmute your mic.
Sorry. I was trying to
You're
get
so excited you were worried you were going to over speak into the microphone, so you muted it.
No, we were talking about being sick. I tried to grab that tissue while you were doing the ad read is what it was, and I never unmuted. No, notably, I like to pick on basketball a little bit. Sorry, TK, but I do love me some March Madness. So, yeah, count me in for that.
And, Tom Koval and I both love March Madness too. It's going to be on our TVs, and I'm sure in a few weeks when the tournament begins, and, we're all up for big tournaments. May I present to you February Madness in District 10, because we have had in the last couple of days, not one, not two, not three, but 4 upsets in the same bracket on the same night in 4A boys. If you missed it on Tuesday, the 4 seed Girard is out of the tournament. The 6 seed Warren is out of the tournament. The 7 seed Fairview Tigers are out of the tournament. And the 8 seed and formerly 19-3 Fort LaBeouf Bison are all out of the tournament. They were upset by Fort LaBeouf, lost to Farrell. Harbor Creek beat Girard coming in as a 13 seed. It was Oil City over Warren in the 11-6 matchup. Slippery Rock clipped Fairview in the 10-7 matchup, all on Tuesday. And, a lot of the time, and I think justifiably so, I rag on the District 10 committee for things. And, I'm not saying I'm an expert, but, there are sometimes that decisions get made that I would think are questionable. But did they nail putting 14 teams in this bracket or what? Because, TK, we talked about this last week. You and I were trying to go through how many teams they would put in. Would it be 8? Would it be 12? We thought it would probably end up being 8. They put 14 in. Clearly a good decision, because what it shows is there were 14 teams that were deserving of making this tournament. We saw it with the upsets on Tuesday.
Oh, first and foremost, my heart goes out to some of the coaches, right? You play, you practice, you prepare in the summer, you're scouting, you're watching films late at night, away from your family. You put so much into it, and it comes down to one game in that first round you lose, and it's just heartbreaking. And for some of those coaches, Mike Coletta having such a great year, and Pat Flaherty at Fairview with a strong team, at Girard, and that's so tough to go out, but it's so fun, to see these battles, and some of them I don't even know if they're upsets, right? It was so hard. Look how difficult time we had seeding teams. You just never know what's with those games, but it's great that you had all the teams in and everybody gets their shot.
That was kind of how I took it too, was thinking about we can call them upsets based off of seeding, but I mean, outside of maybe 1 or 2 teams in this bracket, it's anybody's bracket. I mean, it's anybody's game, right? Just because, and you saw that within some of the games you had in the first round. So upset maybe by ranking, but this was just a close, 4A to begin with, and you're seeing that come to play in the first round.
Let's start and just break these games down a little bit. And I think the first game that at least I want to focus on at the top of the bracket was Fort LaBeouf and Farrell. And you look at these two teams, the Steelers, first and foremost, so 1A team playing up in 4A. And so give them credit for making the decision to go play up this year, feeling like they had the team that could make a run of the tournament. And clearly they've done that, at least in their first game against the Fort LaBeouf team, who had come in 19-3, 67-61 is the final score. We had Mike Coletta on the show a few weeks ago, and I think it's been a great year for the Bison, and I don't think anything should be taken away. But TK, your thoughts on this Farrell team, that in anybody's right mind, I think the goal would always be to move down, right? You don't want to have to play in 4, 5, or 6A if you don't have to. Farrell makes the choice to play up 3 classes, and now they get rewarded with a win in the first round of the playoffs. Your thoughts on that game and how it went down Tuesday?
Well, just some inside stuff. I know that Fort LaBeouf was missing their big guy. He had an injury, I believe. I'm not sure what it was, but he was unable to play, and what a difference maker that would have been. Farrell played very well at the end of the season, right? They won their last 5 games, or 5 of their last 6 games, with big wins over Grove City, Lincoln Park. They beat Sharon, who I think is a really good team, and they blew out Slippery Rock, who is solid with their big guy. So we talked a lot about in previous episodes about how big momentum is, right? And they were really playing well at the end of the season. LaBeouf, I think LaBeouf had the lead going into the fourth quarter, but maybe just by 1 or 2. It just looked like in that game that Farrell was the aggressor. They went to the free throw line 34 or 35 times compared to 12 for Fort LaBeouf. And they closed out that game in the fourth quarter. And I think having the big guy to protect the rim a little bit would have made a difference for them. I know we talked a lot about the region and some of the games that LaBeouf played, but I don't think that mattered at all in that game. I mean, Farrell was a really good team playing really well, and LaBeouf was there the whole time. If they're full strength, does it come out different? Possibly.
And what amazed me too in that game, Nick, is the track meet in the fourth quarter. You had what looked to be a defensive battle throughout. Farrell comes out, and they almost put up 30 in the fourth quarter, and it just seemed like they had another gear that they reached. And so now you look at the bracket, and okay, now they get Cathedral Prep coming off of a bye. Of course, there was no 16 seed, so Prep gets that opening round off. And I think you still have to favor Prep in the game. I think we all probably now favor Prep to win the tournament if we had to make a decision now. But Farrell now becomes, to me, that sneaky team that if you have an off quarter, they can put up 25, 30 points, and all of a sudden you're staring down the barrel of a double-digit deficit, and I don't care what seed you are in the postseason, Nick, that all of a sudden becomes a little bit of a problem.
No, 100%, right? And there's you've heard it talked about before, the curse of supposed to, right? Cathedral Prep dropping down a class, they're supposed to run the table in this bracket. But Farrell, what do they have to lose? They're just going to go out and ball out. The pressure is not really on them to win this game. It's the other way around. And I think that works to your advantage. And you saw that in this game. Like you guys were talking about, Farrell was down 5 going into halftime. They come back, they outscore Fort LaBeouf 19-15 in the third, and they put up 20-28 to Fort LaBeouf's 21 in the fourth, and they win 67-61. So they are, I mean, that shows me right away. I haven't covered this team a lot this year, but that tells me they got some fight in them. They're willing to scratch this out. They're not going to quit, and they're going to kick and scream their way to a win. And I think that could be a recipe for success against Cathedral Prep. Go out there, play your ball, know that everybody thinks you're going to lose, and then show them why they're wrong.
It's going to be a heck of a game. By the way, that one tomorrow, 6 o'clock at Penn West Edinburgh. That's going to be the first game of a doubleheader there. Game number 2 is going to be between Grove City, the 5 seed who took care of business against Franklin, and then the Harbor Creek Huskies, which was the one team that Tom Koval and I talked about on last Thursday's show, if they should be in or not. They go to Fairview on Friday, put up a solid effort. JT Del Sandro gets us 1,000 point. They still can't win the game. And District 10 puts them in as the second to last team in this tournament. It was them and Conneaut who were 13-14. And what an effort against Girard, who had a really good season off the back of a state semifinal appearance a year ago. They win 47-44. And I look now at Ryan Smock, and I think to myself, this guy's been through a lot of difficult games and seasons where things have been a roller coaster ride. And now he's got a signature win on the season. And now I look at Harbor Creek and I think, okay, now they're in a good position coming off of that huge win on Tuesday. Tom, how surprised were you at this game? Because I think you were probably the one on this podcast more than anyone who was a mouthpiece for Harbor Creek in vouching for them to have a shot at this tournament.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised at all. I mean, just knowing the ins and outs of that team and coaching staff, they work really hard to execute. They work really hard defensively, even though they might not be the most talented and most athletic. Coach Smock gets a ton out of them. And what a game plan they had going into this game. Kind of like a 2-3 matchup zone where they were shading Kenny. I think they really frustrated him. He didn't score all the first quarter. He did end up getting his points really well, but I really thought they screwed up the rhythm of the offense. So kudos to Coach Smock and his staff. He may have been getting some tips from the Wizard of Wattsburg. From what I know, they played a few zones against Girard as well. So I think Coach Smock had a great game plan. I think his players executed it really well. And when you have somebody like JT Del Sandro that can score, a good strong guard is going to get you going. What a battle, what a game. It's so sad to see Kenny be out. But I wasn't surprised to see Harbor Creek get it done.
Well, and first and foremost, the great thing for Girard is Kenny Godoy is not a senior, so he's going to have a chance to come back next season and put up numbers for Girard. I think for me, what this game came down to was two things. Number one was Girard just didn't have the depth this season that they did last season. And I'm going to just say this. I'm a huge Mark Schreier fan. I have been a fan of him as a head coach since he came to Girard. I think he does a tremendous job with each of his teams. I think he got more out of Girard this season than maybe even he expected to with the team, the players that he had lost last year, whether it was Edwards, whether it was Delomo and the rest. But what amazed me for Harbor Creek, and this is something that I think is going unnoticed with this Husky team, Tucker Schwatek is before our very eyes becoming a dual threat player. He now can shoot from deep. And I think that what you're seeing now with Harbor Creek is when you have a guy that is able to play both in the post and both from the outside, and you can rotate, you give people different looks, and now all of a sudden you can't just game plan for JT on the outside. And I think Harbor Creek's ball movement, they only scored 47 points. I'm not saying their offense was tremendous, but their ball movement on Tuesday was better than what I've seen them a lot of this year from the time that I've seen them. And kudos to them because they're now becoming, like you talked about, Tom, a well-rounded team. And Nick, we talked about Farrell's ability to score. Harbor Creek, to me, is the opposite in terms of their well-roundedness because now they have players that can play everywhere and they can rotate men in and out in different spots. And if you're an opponent, you can't game plan for one specific player, even though JT is the main guy.
Well, and you're talking about momentum too, right? Like, I mean, they're going to ride the momentum of this game into the rest of the postseason because they, Girard was the team that was coming in, and I agree with you. I think they're going to be a team to beat next year. But Harbor Creek, not only are they figuring it out, Del Centro's been great all year, but there are other players stepping up. But I think to your credit too, they're getting healthy, and now they have that momentum. They know they can win a big game, and that could be dangerous for them moving forward.
You're going to make a point, TK.
Yeah, Harbor Creek, they struggle to score. They've struggled all year to score. And I think the best thing about that team is that, Coach Smock knows that, and the team knows that. So to your point, Isaac, they do work the ball around really well. They really try to execute on offense and get the best shot that they can. And I can remember last year trying to game plan, and Tyler, he's a big guard, and he's somebody you got to worry about. So if he's scoring, and that gets a little bit of attention off of JT, then they got a little two-man game that they can really work with, and we'll see. You got an experienced head coach there, and he's going to put them in a good position. So, hopefully they can advance against a very physical Grove City team.
Yeah, and again, that's going to be the second of the doubleheader at Penn West Edinboro. And I also want to mention, too, which I think is important, the huge part of winning your first-round game if you're one of these lower seeds is you are guaranteed a chance, even if you lose Friday, for a berth in the state playoffs. District 10's take it in 5 teams out of Class 4A. So I think it's important for our audience to know that the losers of these second-round games are now going to be put into a loser's bracket where the winner of that bracket is going to the state playoffs as the 5th team. So even if you're a Harbor Creek or a Farrell or some of the other teams that we're going to mention really quickly here, is that you lose Friday, you're not out. And I think that that's something that's really important because even if things go chalk, and let's say it's Cathedral Prep that wins and Grove City beats Harbor Creek and you get Hickory over Slippery Rock and Sharon beats Oil City, now you have an exciting tournament between a lot of low seeds for the 5th spot. So I think that's going to be exciting as well. And so, season doesn't end. It guarantees to extend it one more game for all of these 8 teams, even if they were to lose on Friday night. Let's go down to the bracket. And I think the one game that was, I want to say, the most common game because it was 2 teams in the same region and we jostled back and forth all year as to how good Region 5 was going to be. Oil City beating Warren in what was another classic, a game that was also close in a 59-51 final. Start with you, TK, on this because, I think we questioned a lot of how Region 5 was going to stack up, which team was the best in the region, and it appears, just based on what we're seeing, that maybe that team was Oil City.
Yeah, what an even game. Right?
Yeah.
It truly was a battle going. I mean, it was close the entire time, back and forth. Again, 2 teams that know each other from the region. So, you're not adding that much at the end of the season, maybe a wrinkle here and there. Your teams know each other. It really just comes down to, who makes their buckets at the end of the play. And there's so many things involved with that with the 17-year-old boys, right? But yeah, battling back and forth the whole time. And when you've got a region foe, you never know which way it's going to go in that one.
And we mentioned, Nick, at the top of the broadcast, how difficult it is to beat a team 3 times. That's what Warren was going for against Oil City. They had beaten the Oilers twice in the regular season, and now Oil City gets the better of them. And I just think, District 10, I think for the most part, did a pretty good job of separating teams in the same region, right? We wanted to see different matchups. We wanted to see games for the first time. This was really the one game, just a quick glance. There may have been another one, but just quick glance of the bracket, really the one game that was of familiar opponents. And I think Oil City took advantage of what, and I don't want to say it was a favorable draw from them. You don't want to say a favorable draw as a team that you've lost twice to, but in a way, advantage you when you lose to a team twice, and now you know what you have to go up against, and Oil City made it count when it mattered in the postseason.
Yeah, I think it's the familiarity, right? I mean, like Tom said, you had evenly matched teams, and you played them twice already. So at that point, if you're that even matched, and the losses from what I remember, I was trying to scroll through while you were working on the setup to look. They were close games. Yeah, it's not like they were. They were big blowouts before. So if you're Oil City, you can go into this game and win. And you look at the post-game box score, you had 3 players score double-digit points. You had an evenly matched team, and you outpaced Warren. You're even after 1, you're up by 1 after 2, you start to creep up by 3 after 3, and then keep the momentum up, and you're up by 4, and that's small ball 59-51 by the end. So even match game, but Oil City just seemed like they were spreading the ball around, and that's just gave them the edge in this one.
Yeah, stats we're pulling tonight, Max Preps Go Erie, amongst other sites that are helping us with the stats from these games on Tuesday. And now, TK, you get Oil City and Sharon, who took care of business against Conneaut in what I think is going to be a very intriguing game. And Sharon's tough. They're in the number 3 seed, and we talked about should they be the 2 seed going into the tournament, and ended up being Hickory. To your point, we figured Sharon and Hickory would be 2 of those teams near the top. And what I think could be an interesting matchup if Oil City is able to keep up the pace of what they've been able to keep up at. But Sharon's just, I think, a different animal. And they showed that on Tuesday in a 55-41 win against Conneaut, and the defense really stood out.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about Sharon's regular season. They have some really big wins. They had a really tough schedule, so they're battle tested for sure. I think they're really talented, but at the same point, towards the end of the season, they lost a couple tough games as well. I think they beat Hickory both times they played, so they could be a very good team. So I would watch out for them in the rest of the bracket. They're super talented, and they got some guys that can score the ball.
Let's run through TK quickly before we end the 4A bracket and touch on a couple of girls' teams in just a moment ahead of their games on Saturday. The Fairview Slippery Rock game, in a game that it just didn't seem like Fairview's offense really could get going. What surprised you, if anything, about that? I mean, again, I know Slippery Rock in their own right had got a couple of big wins in the region they played in, but it just didn't seem like Fairview's offense really got going all night.
They really didn't, and I'll probably catch up with Pat Flaherty at some point. He probably won't talk to me for about 3 weeks after a loss. He'll be watching film every night. But one thing when you look at that game is if you look at the stat line, Fairview didn't shoot 1 free throw the entire game. And that tells you right off the bat that they're not being aggressive on offense. And they weren't. The big guy, Book inside, I think he had an effect on the team, right? They were settling for jumpers and floaters. They weren't really attacking him, which is probably why they're not getting the free throw line, and that can really ruin the flow of your offense. I'm sure Pat was probably really getting on his kids to be more aggressive and really attack the rim and attack the big guy, make him guard. But yeah, 0 free throws for those guys just makes me think, we're selling for too many jumpers. We got to attack more. And I think that really hurt them, not to take anything away from Slippery Rock.
Yeah, and now for the Rockets, they get Hickory coming up at Farrell High School. That's 7:30. Sharon Oil City will be the game that precedes it. So 4A will all take place at 2 locations. So if you're up for some great basketball on Friday, highly suggest you get out to Edinboro. Highly suggest if you want to make the drive, stay safe on the roads to travel to Farrell. 4A on Friday is going to be some sort of chaos to see which teams move on to the semifinals and which teams are going to have to duke it out for the number 5 seed. Because again, as we talk about, the losers will have to battle it out for 5th. You win Friday. Congratulations. You've punched your ticket to the state tournament because it is a 5-team bracket. So that are taken from District 10. So the winners of Friday's games are in the state tournaments, and the losers will have to battle it out, 4 teams for 1 spot. All right, before we go, I want to touch on just a couple of more interesting games that could prove consequential on Saturday. And I want to start, guys, in 3A and get your thoughts, TK, on Mercyhurst Prep Northeast. Northwestern, they're sitting in 3A, the number 1 seed, deservedly so, 22-0. But just your thoughts on this game. Mercyhurst Prep and Dan Perfetto are always ready to play, but Northeast has had some sneaky wins. How do you think this could potentially go on Saturday, knowing that Northwestern awaits the winner of this one?
Well, Northeast showed that they can play with them. I mean, when they played early in the season at Northeast, it was a 53-49 game, so it was very tight. But more recently, Mercyhurst Prep beat them 49-23. So if Mercyhurst Prep can run their offense the way that they need to, and they score the ball, I think it's going to be a really tough game for Northeast. But again, we're in the playoffs now, right? You come out and you play good defense, somebody gets into foul trouble, you get something to tilt your way a little bit, and that game can change really fast.
And Nick, I'm just curious because we've talked a lot about Northwestern all year, right? In the undefeated season, Michaela Presser-Palmer, I think all of those topics make it warranted. And I guess when you look at this tournament, Seneca's sitting there in the number 2 seed. Is there anything from your perspective, based on what we've talked about, Nick, that would lead you to believe that Northwestern could get clipped in this tournament? I mean, I don't see it, but again, it's maybe something about the undefeated year. I don't know. I'm trying to spitball the potential for an upset at the end of this tournament here in 3A girls.
I'm going to go back to the curse of Sposta. I mean, this Northwestern team is maybe one of the best girls basketball teams I've ever seen. MPP is lights out every game. She's putting up 20-plus points. She's a team player. She's doing it the right way. So I think we talk about momentum tonight. I think, there's a good chance that they ride that momentum. I like Mari Nixon and Mercyhurst Prep. I think they have a shot. They have a good chance to beat Northeast again coming up on Saturday. And then, can they get through Northwestern? But you got to go back and look at, okay, whenever Northwestern faced off against Seneca last time, it was a really close 41-37.
Seneca was at the half big.
Exactly. So it took the second half of that game for Northwestern to come back. And I mean, that just shows how good that team is. But I just don't think Seneca or Mercyhurst Prep are going to be a cakewalk if that ends up being who Northwestern comes to play.
Nice thing, too, about this bracket, specifically in 3A girls, is 2 teams are going to go from it. And so I think Seneca is deserving of the state playoffs this year. As we've talked about, they are really the one team, save for Fairview at the beginning point of the season, that played Northwestern close. And so if they can get to the final, Greenville, their opponent, coming up on Wednesday the 26th, I think they're deserving of making the dance as well in states, and that would be the case if they can get there. Final game that I think is an under-the-radar game coming up this Saturday, and now we go from 4A boys to 4A girls. I look at the bracket, and Fairview Corey is the local matchup. I think that'll be intriguing for a little bit, but Fairview's, I think, is the team that probably is going to pull away in the third and fourth quarter. Harbor Creek Hickory could be intriguing for me, but then I look at the bottom of the bracket, and I go back to January 20th when these 2 teams played, and the result was 46-43, and yet none of the 4 quarters were competitive. General McLean dominated 2, Slippery Rock dominated 2. How about GM Slippery Rock in the 3-6 matchup? The Lancers have had, for all intents and purposes, a much improved season from the last couple of years, and they've got 1,000-point scorer Libby Opp. But Slippery Rock is again, I hate to say the word slippery, but they played well in their region this year. They made it difficult on several teams, including General McLean, the score. TK, your thoughts on this game and how you think it could play out? Second meeting between General McLean and Slippery Rock, and a huge game because, again, it's a situation where you win and you're in the state tournament.
Well, if you look at the last game that Slippery Rock lost, that was the January 20th game against General McLean. So if we're talking about momentum, right, they got nothing but wins, and they got that one loss in the rearview mirror. So those girls are going to be ready to play this game. But I think Sarah Schultz is going to have them ready. If their offense is going, if they can get Lily to score the ball really well, when she scores, they seem to have no problem with their flow and rolling offense. So I think it'll be really important to get her going in that game. But it could be a battle. I can see Slippery Rock, having a target on General McLean.
Yeah, and likewise on the GM side. I mean, you're talking to Libby up. I think Sam DeRay has had a great second half of the year as well to kind of round out that offense. GM's been a little bit of back and forth this year, but I love Tom's point on Slippery Rock just riding that momentum since the GM game, holding on to a win streak, and they're going to look to keep that up against GM again.
Player in this game that I think is probably an under-the-radar player because he doesn't score much but has come off the bench and has really been the sixth player for General McLean this season. Sabine Gaynor, I think, is going to have a good game for the Lancers. She has been, in my view, a defensive stalwart, and she draws a lot of fouls, too, inside the block. She's really attacked the rim well for Sarah Schultz's team. It's going to be a heck of a game on Saturday. That's at Meadville High School at 3 o'clock, and the 4A girls bracket is similar to the 4A boys bracket, except there is no lose and you get a shot for fifth place. So all the winners of these games on Saturday are going to be in the state tournament, and all the losers will go home. So that'll make it an extra layer of excitement for basketball and 4A girls coming up on Saturday. I know we didn't get a chance to talk about all the games, but those were really the big ones. And I think what it ultimately says, at least from my point of view and probably our podcast platform point of view, put more teams in every year. I think we should have had 16. I still think we should have had 16 for 4A boys. But how privileged is this area now, TK, to be in a situation where we legitimately can say that basketball is a sport where seeding doesn't really make a difference. You see in football all the time, top seeds typically win. That's just how it's always been. Basketball isn't that case, and it just makes for more exciting playoff action.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk this week about the college football playoffs and how they seeded teams, based on different rules as opposed to just the national rankings, right? I think you can throw that stuff out the window sometimes, right? Any given Sunday or any given Friday night for high school hoops, you don't know what's going to happen. And when you let all those teams in, right, it's just fun to watch it. It's fun to watch it play out, and you feel bad for teams that lose that everybody thought should have won. But that Cinderella story is certainly fun to watch somebody come in and knock off somebody that's supposed to win. It's fun to get behind them.
Tom, how much does that playoff bracket juice a team? Not that the regular season's not important, but how much does a team, especially at the high school level, really step it up once we get to a tournament?
It is so much fun. I think we talked about it a couple episodes ago when I coached at Central, and it was Central and East and Girard and Harbor Creek. And we had all those, and then the teams in the South, Franklin, Meadville. When you brought them all together, there was just such a cool feeling, about seeing different teams and seeing how that bracket could play out. And if we do lose, we get into the losers bracket, we can still go, as opposed to Erie and McDowell, it's one game, two teams every year, and you just got to win that one. And if you lose your out, it definitely is a different feeling. There's a lot more excitement when you get big brackets like that. So I think it's cool for a player and it's cool as a coach, right, to strategize and see what can happen. February madness.
Yeah.
Amen to that. In a time where seasons are being moved up faster and faster, hell, we have college baseball and softball starting this weekend. It is neat to get to see the tournament, at least in high school, spill over into February when the snow's still coming down. And the wonderful thing about it is, with the upsets on Tuesday and other days as well, now we get a chance for potentially more upsets coming up tomorrow, and we'll keep an eye on that. It's going to be a lot of fun. Also, make sure to stay tuned as well. We are trying to get in the works some live podcasts happening at some locations for games, so stay tuned to our social media channels to be determined on all of that. We got a new episode coming up tomorrow. Paul Adamczak's going to take you through into the weekend. The Draft Podcast, episode 4, premieres tomorrow on our channels at 8 o'clock. Paul's talking all things leading up to the draft, and then he talks NFL Combine coming up next week, because if you can believe that, we're already around the corner for that.
Insane.
As well.
Insane.
Dude, time just flies.
And hey, don't forget US up 2-1.
Oh, good.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know, TK, if you're into the hockey thing, but if you aren't, you should watch this game. Did you see what happened a few days ago?
I did not.
All right, so there were 3 fights in the first 9 seconds of the first period.
I love you've seen the comparisons, right, where it's like NFL goes to flag football.
Yeah.
NBA players they're trying to find a way out of the NBA All-Star game. The Four Nations matchup fights, drop gloves at the first second of the game. Like there's a difference here among hockey players.
They are different. They're a lot like wrestlers. They walk at their own stride. So different.
Great, crazy into half of it, man. But that's why we love them. Well, if you're watching us now, we're finally going to sign off so you can enjoy the rest of this game. But thanks again for being a part of our program and our podcast network. We love you all, and we're so happy to be bringing you this content week in, week out. We'll talk to you tomorrow for the Draft Podcast, Monday on Flagship City Sports Talk when the games go final this weekend. May your team win if they're still alive. If not, then just hope for chaos because that's more fun than shock. See you on Monday, everybody.